It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.
Welcome to EdTech Mondays Nigeria, a platform that facilitates critical conversations on the use of technology for teaching and learning. I am Chiemezie Uche, your host, and it's great to be here. Across Nigeria, digital learning solutions are growing rapidly, but progress is uneven, especially in situations where policy and systems do not align. When education, innovation, and inclusion policies operate separately, the learners who need the support the most are left behind. On this month's episode of EdTech Mondays Nigeria, we will be discussing a very critical topic: harmonizing cross-sector policy for EdTech adoption. The 2019 National Policy on ICT in Education outlined 7 strategic components: infrastructure, curriculum integration, capacity building, content development, policy and standards, partnerships and funding, and monitoring and evaluation. But 6 years later, how far have we come? How well are digital learning policies and frameworks being implemented? Is there a need for newer policies like the recently inaugurated 2025 National EdTech Strategy? These and many more are the conversations we'll be having this month. This week, I have experts whose work revolve around digital education policy design and implementation, and will be joining me to do justice to the conversation. Our first guest currently serves as the Thematic Lead of the Education Policy Commission at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, and manages programs at the Alliance for Women and Girls. He previously worked with the Chief Network Office at Teach for All, where he led strategy and execution on localization, decolonization, and girls' education. He also served as a technical assistant on the Nigeria Medium-Term National Plan 2025 Development Team under the Education and Human Capital Working Groups. He is an alumnus of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, British Council Future Leaders Connect Program, Teach for All, and the NESG Bridge Fellowship. Join me as I welcome Godwin Henry to the show today. Hello, Godwin. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Our next guest here today is the Program Officer and the Head of Innovation and Entrepreneurship Desk at the Office of Nigeria Digital Innovation at the National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA, where he leads initiatives that empower startups, strengthen innovation hubs, and drive Nigeria's digital transformation. He has managed key national projects, including the iHatch Cohort 4 Incubation Program supported by JICA and the $125 million Test ICT Infrastructure Project. Join me as I welcome Victor Ejeh to our midst today. Hello, Victor. It's great to have you here. I'll come back to him. So, our last guest is the CTO and co-founder of Mavis Computel, an EdTech company tackling Nigeria's literacy crisis through innovative digital learning solutions. He leads the development of the award-winning Mavis Talking Books, an interactive system combining physical books and digital pens to deliver immersive multilingual learning. The solution has reached over 20,000 children and 500 teachers across several countries and won the British Council Elton's Award for Innovation in English Language Learning. He is driven by his passion for technology, music, and children's education, and is committed to building scalable solutions that expand learning access across Africa. Join me to welcome Chiemezie Ucheaga, who is the co-founder and CTO of Mavis Computel. Hello, Chiemezie. It's good to have you here.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So let's jump right in. So I'll start with you, Godwin. How have existing digital learning policies and frameworks shaped EdTech adoption and digital learning in Nigeria? And you see that in my opening statement, I made reference to the National ICT Policy on Education, which was launched in 2019. So maybe you might want to just stay with that to tell us how well this has, supported EdTech adoption and digital learning in Nigeria.
Thank you. I think that's a great place to start. And for the purpose of this conversation, I'll stay with the positives. One of the things I always like to say is that policies might not be perfect. In fact, I've never seen a perfect policy, but what they do help us to know and understand is what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. And for the 2019 policy on ICT in education, one thing that it has been able to help us to achieve is having an understanding of our ICT and digital education landscape. Because so far we've had the framework that is guiding ICT in education in Nigeria being established. It has also helped us in some way accelerate how we are training teachers when it comes to ICT. So this is some of the key things. And you see, because of this policy as well, you're having more startups come into this space because they are able to see what the focus of the government is and where they should be playing. So there've been that introduction of startups in the space. There's been focus around especially around the teacher training and access to digital tools for young learners. So this, I'll just say briefly, are some of the positives that we've seen from that particular policy framework here.
Great. So hi Victor, it's great to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. I was surprised you guys couldn't hear me, but I'm glad to be back.
Thank you. So I'll now come to you, Chiemezie. Did you know that there is the 2019 policy, national policy on ICT in education, and has this policy and maybe many others influenced the adoption of your talking books, because that's your product? Has it in any way influenced the adoption of your product, or even the way that you're able to relate with stakeholders, as in your point of view as a startup founder?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, the inclusion of this policy has helped to create awareness about the fact that education technology is very important in the advancement of education in general. So we've seen a shift in terms of the request for education technology to be included in regular education programs that have helped people actually even reach out to us more in terms of talking books being included in what they are trying to do. We've seen an uptake in competition saying, okay, this is what we're doing in rural areas. How can EdTech support? Before that, we were always going to tell them, see, it is possible to move the needle in the right direction with education technology. But now they're saying they're doing this education program here and they know that EdTech would support it. Can we help? So it's actually helped in us being invited to be at the table in such discussions. So in summary, I would say that it's been very helpful in terms of positive adoption for education technology in general.
Thank you, Chiemezie. And now to you, Victor. Understanding this, Chiemezie has now said, yes, it works for him, and Godwin has highlighted, that what this has done, it has provided guardrails for how different stakeholders can, interact with technology, what they understand technology to be able to do, and, putting those pushbacks where necessary and saying, we'll engage with you this way. ICT should be able to do XYZ things for us, so we know when to demand more. Coming back now, how effectively are the relevant ministries and agencies across education, communications, and innovation, collaborating to implement these policies and frameworks that can support digital learning?
I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to contribute my bit. And my answer to your question would be to first highlight that yes, collaboration is happening. It is, but it is mostly program based. In other words, ministries and agencies do work together on specific initiatives, but there is not yet a single institutionalized mechanism that compels joint planning, budgeting, or monitoring across education, communication, and innovation. I'll give you an example. And NITDA have supported digital skills and device access initiative that feed into the education sector goals. Now, even though they are not housed in the Federal Ministry of Education, these initiatives support what the Ministry of Education does.
So I'll stay on you to now ask, how do we enhance this collaboration if most of the ways that we operate, as you mentioned, are on program basis? How, being somebody who is, internal, who is in the mix, what are some of the ways, you would suggest that these collaborations could be bettered to ensure that there is that synergy across ministries, across parastatals, that now gives us richer implementation of these policies?
You see, the collaboration in this context, it cannot be symbolic. What I mean is, it looks like it from the outside, but it's not operational, and it must be operational. The government needs to establish a clear coordination mechanism, perhaps in form of a, let me say, maybe National Council on Digital Education and Innovation. A body that brings together the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, the NITDA as an agency, and all the other development partners that play different roles in this ecosystem. Maybe that council it will not replace the existing agencies. It will just have maybe representatives from these different agencies I've mentioned and the other stakeholders, and then they will ensure that every policy intervention is guided by a common national roadmap. Now, beyond the federal level, the interagency collaboration must extend to state governments as well, universities, and other private sector players. Now, many state ministries of education are developing their own digital learning initiatives, but with minimal alignment to national frameworks as we know it. And it often leads to an inefficient and uneven outcome across states. So I believe that if we could establish a shared, policy observatory, platform, a platform where all EdTech initiatives, data, best practices, everything is reported and evaluated, it would not only enhance accountability, but also enable learning across the regions.
Is this something that the government would lead, or who is going to be the project owner for such a daring, convening?
Okay, I think that question is really it's a great question, and just like Victor was trying to respond to the questions. If you look at it, the key issues when it comes to tech policy is not much different from our general policy challenge. And if you look at who should own the process, because of how we operate and because of the level of resources that is needed, the government has to be the convening body for bringing everyone together, at least the first coordination. However, subsequently there are already existing groups. I belong to one where we work closely with the government. It's just that, again, like he has said, for when you go to different government ministries and agencies, they are all doing different things. So when they all come together, you are then able to have one roadmap. But I don't see them beyond bringing everyone together, being the one to continuously lead the conversation. But that very first convening, it's actually the government.
So Chiemezie, I'll bring this to you. Knowing that innovators like you are upwardly mobile and very busy, what role would, and this is my final question, what role would innovators, EdTech innovators like you play in actually bringing about this harmonization of policies?
It's such a good question. I think I'll summarize it like this. For us EdTech entrepreneurs, I think one of the most important things that we need to do is that we need to understand the difference between just education technology and relevant technology. What happens is, if you look at, for example, fintech, it's been very easy to harmonize a lot of stuff because they work right off the bat for the users. So you'll find out for some people, before the cashless policy even came into play, some people had been operating 5-6 months without needing to go to the bank. So it was almost like a stamp on something that already looked very workable. So when it comes to education technology, it has to be beyond that there's technology in education, but it has to be that we're showing that it actually does work and it's actually very scalable, so that it's very easy for the government to say, let us do this. For example, in our own case, we had to go the extra mile to make sure that it is possible for government agencies, for people to see that you can have technology that works in rural areas that don't have internet access, that don't have access to electricity, and for the learners to learn in their own local language, with technology being the driving force to make sure that there's still quality education for the person in Goza or Mongono, as there is quality education in the people in Maitama. So when you look at the fact that technology can enhance education in that way, it becomes easy for policy to say, okay, this is part of what we are going to do to make sure that education reaches those areas. But if it is technology that is making the work a little bit difficult for the users, but they must embrace it because they say there's this policy on education. The technology, in essence, is to make things easier for the user. So if we as entrepreneurs, one of the main things that we're called to do is to make things so easy that even when you're talking about synergy, it is easy for someone to say, okay, these guys are doing this thing here. It's up to the entrepreneurs to say, how can we work together with these guys to make it work? So that the government is very easy for them to say, okay, all we're just doing is coordinating. So the two things I'm just saying is, first of all, we need to make sure as entrepreneurs that what we do works. It works, not that we are waiting for them to say they must do this policy so that they force people to accept it. People must be already willing to accept it because they see that it works. That's number one. And then number two, we must be willing to make sure that what we're doing is compatible with what other people have, so that it's very easy for synergy to happen, so that it's not just one person locking down one place or anything like that. So those are the two things. Make sure it works and make sure you're ready to collaborate. It's very easy to harmonize policy around technology that actually does that. So that's my own contribution here.
Any parting words for you on who the conveners for this should be, and what some of the immediate outcomes we'll get would be?
I was trying to say something earlier where I said the suggestion I made about bringing a council together was something, or a sort of platform where representatives from different agencies, both private and public sector, come together to harmonize the framework, the strategy they are working with. Make sure that we are able to take advantage of where my KPI helps your KPI. Make sure that we are able to monitor what is going on in the ed tech industry at a national level, and not everybody doing their things, doing their stuff in a fragmented way. So if we can have these conversations regularly with all the stakeholders, or as many as possible, talking about it and monitoring where there are loopholes we need to fill, the collaboration will be more coordinated and our results would improve significantly. So that's basically what I was trying to say when I had the issue with the network. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Victor. Thank you, Chiemezie, and thank you, Godwin, for doing justice to the opening part of this conversation. I'm so pumped up because if we do not take anything away, what we will establish clearly is, who should own the convenings, and what are the roles of also identifying the stakeholders in this possible convening, and what the roles of these stakeholders should be, and what some of the outcomes we are to expect can be. So thank you so much all for being on the show with us today. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Clear policies are only as effective as their implementation. As our guests have shared, collaboration across ministries and stakeholders is the key to translating policy into real impact for digital learning and EdTech adoption in Nigeria. To you, our listeners, having established a way this could work, who are the different stakeholders you think are responsible for harmonizing policies to drive EdTech adoption in Nigeria? Are we missing out anyone? We've mentioned the government. We've started with calling also the EdTech innovators. Who else do you think needs to be in a room where we are discussing harmonizing cross-sector policies for EdTech adoption in Nigeria? Would love to hear from you. Share your thoughts via our SMS and our WhatsApp channels on these numbers: 0703 165 0809 or call 0706 402 0742. I'll go over the numbers again: 0703 165 0809 or 0706 402 0742. Remember, you can continue this conversation with us off the air on any of our WhatsApp and Telegram channels. Simply search for EdTech Mondays Nigeria. We have a very vibrant community there. Who knows, you could be our next guest on the show. And if you know anyone who missed this episode or any of the other episodes, look no further. We are live on Spotify. Search for EdTech Mondays Nigeria, and you can watch the full video of this session and our other episodes on CC Hub Africa on YouTube. Until I come your way, same time, same station, I remain your host, Chiemezie Uche. Keep using technology to push the frontiers on education. It's bye for now.
It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.